Look, let me ask you something. Are you that person everyone calls when things fall apart? The one who shows up at 3 in the morning, who hands out emotional support like it's oxygen, who gives their time, energy, and money without thinking twice. And then when you're the one drowning, when you finally reach out, suddenly everyone's busy. Or here's the kicker. The people you help the most are the ones spreading rumors about you behind your back. Here's what I need you to understand. This isn't some cosmic bad luck. This isn't about you having poor judgment or attracting the wrong energy. The real answer is way more unsettling. There's actual neuroscience behind why this keeps happening to you. Researchers call it a high empathy, low reciprocity detection system. Basically, your brain is running software that makes you incredibly good at giving, but terrible at spotting who's actually going to give back. And the people using you? They're operating on completely different programming. They can see you coming from a mile away. If you've ever felt like the universe's official doormat, if you've given everything and watched people walk away like you never existed, drop a sword emoji down in the comments. And listen, if you want the deep dive into why narcissists and emotional vampires can smell a giver from across the room, I break down the full neuroscience in my newsletter. You'll find the link sitting right there in the channel description. All right, let's break down exactly why your helpfulness keeps backfiring on you. Trait number 1, the Fawn Response Magnet. Okay, here's what's really going on inside your nervous system. If you grew up in a home where affection came with conditions attached, where you had to prove yourself worthy of being cared about, where your job was to keep everyone else calm, where you learned that your feelings didn't matter as much as managing everyone else's chaos, then your brain wired itself around a specific survival pattern. Trauma researchers call this the fawn response. You've probably heard of fight, flight, and freeze. But fawning? That's the fourth option your nervous system can pick when you're in danger. Fawning is when you survive by making yourself useful, by anticipating needs, by becoming so helpful, so accommodating, so easy to deal with that people have no reason to hurt you. You learn to erase your own needs completely because having needs wasn't safe. Now, here's where this gets really messed up. People can sense this about you. I'm not talking about conscious awareness. They're not sitting there thinking, oh, this person's a fawn type, let me exploit them. It's way more automatic than that. Users, narcissists, energy vampires, their fast processing, unconscious brain, what psychologists call System 1 thinking, picks up on your patterns instantly. They notice how you apologize too much, how you're uncomfortable with saying no, how you jump in to smooth over awkward moments, how you prioritize their comfort over your own boundaries. You're not just attracting takers by accident. Your nervous system is literally broadcasting a signal that says, I will accept lopsided relationships. I will give more than I get. I won't fight back when you cross lines. And certain people are walking around with radar specifically tuned to that frequency. They don't target you because you're weak. They target you because their predatory instincts recognize someone who's been trained not to defend themselves. That's the dark truth nobody talks about. Your childhood survival strategy is now an adult vulnerability, and the wrong people know exactly how to spot it. Trait number 2, empathy asymmetry. Here's something most people don't realize about empathy. It's not distributed equally across the population. We need to talk about mirror neurons. These are specialized brain cells that activate both when you do something yourself and when you observe someone else doing it. They're why you wince when you watch someone slam their finger in a car door. They're the biological foundation of feeling what other people feel. But here's the part that explains everything. Mirror neuron activity exists on a spectrum. Some people have what researchers describe as a high-resolution emotional system. If this is you, and if you're watching this video, it probably is your brain runs incredibly detailed simulations of other people's inner worlds. You don't just understand that someone's upset. You actually experience a version of their distress in your own body. Your heart rate changes. Your stress hormones spike. It's like your nervous system can't tell the difference between their pain and yours. The people you keep helping? A lot of them are operating with what psychologists call low affective empathy. They've got cognitive empathy down. They can intellectually map out what you're feeling. They understand the concept of your emotions, but they don't actually feel it. There's no emotional charge attached, no discomfort, no urgency. So let's break down what's actually happening in these relationships. When they come to you in crisis, Your brain is running a full HD simulation of their suffering. You're not just thinking, oh, that's sad. You're literally feeling a shadow version of their panic, their grief, their fear. That's what drives you to help. You're trying to turn off an alarm that's ringing inside your own head. But when you need help, their brain doesn't run that program. When you're struggling, there's no simulation happening on their end. No emotional resonance. No internal alarm screaming at them to do something. Intellectually, sure, they might recognize you need support. But there's no gut-level compulsion to act on it. No emotional cost to scrolling past your text. No psychological discomfort in ghosting you. This is what I call empathy asymmetry, and it's why you keep feeling crazy. You've been treating this like it's a balanced relationship, like you're both playing by the same rules. But you're playing an entirely different game. You thought you were both running the same operating system, but you've got the premium empathy package, and they're running on basic mode. The relationship was never equal because your brains were never processing connection the same way in the first place. Trait number 3. The gratitude deficit. All right, this next one is going to mess with your head, but stay with me. You'd assume that when you really show up for someone, when you bail them out financially, when you talk them through their crisis at 2 a.m, when you go above and beyond, they'd be grateful, right? They'd feel bonded to you. They'd remember what you did and want to return the favor someday. Psychology says that's not what happens. In fact, the opposite occurs with alarming frequency. There's a phenomenon called cognitive dissonance that explains this perfectly. Here's how it works. When you help someone in a significant way, especially if they didn't explicitly ask for it, or if your help highlights how much they were struggling, you create a psychological imbalance in their mind. You've put them in debt. Not financial debt necessarily, but something worse, emotional debt. And human beings absolutely hate feeling indebted. Our brains are wired to despise the sensation of owing someone, of being the weaker party, of having to admit we needed rescuing. So their brain has 2 options. Option 1, accept the debt, feel grateful, and figure out how to reciprocate. That option requires humility. It requires sitting with the uncomfortable truth that they were vulnerable and you had power in that moment. Option 2 is way easier. Their brain rewrites the entire narrative. This is the cognitive dissonance escape hatch. They start minimizing what you actually did. It wasn't that big of a deal. Anyone would have done it. They start inventing ulterior motives for you. They only helped because they wanted something from me. They were trying to make me feel inferior. They're one of those people who help so they can hold it over your head later. Watch how insidious this gets. They convince themselves that your help was actually an insult, that you were being controlling or patronizing, that you made them feel small. Their brain manufactures reasons to resent you, because resentment is more comfortable than gratitude when you can't or won't repay the debt. And here's the final act in this psychological drama. They betray you. They badmouth you to mutual friends. They ghost you when you need them. They twist stories to make you look like the villain. Because here's what betrayal does, it completely eliminates the debt. If they can convince themselves and others that you weren't actually that great, that you had bad intentions, that you're somehow a toxic person, then they don't owe you anything anymore. The dissonance is resolved. This is why, and I need you to really hear this, the people you help the most are often the ones who end up hurting you the worst. It's not random. It's not bad luck. You made them feel small by being generous, and their ego needed to cut you down to size so they could feel powerful again. Your kindness became their wound, and they're making you pay for it. Trait number 4, parentification. Let's go deeper. If this pattern isn't just a recent thing, if you've been the emotional support system for people since you were a kid, if you were mediating your parents' fights before you hit puberty, if you were the mature one, while the actual adults in your life were falling apart, then you went through something psychologists call parentification. Parentification is when a child gets forced into a caretaker role before their brain has even finished developing the neural pathways for understanding healthy reciprocity. You were supposed to be learning how to receive care, how to have needs, how to expect that the people who love you will show up for you. Instead, you learned the exact opposite. You learned that your value came from how well you managed other people's emotions. You learned that love meant labor. You learned to read the room, anticipate problems, fix things before they exploded. Now here's the neurobiological damage this causes. There's a network in your brain called the default mode network. It's the system that's active when you're not focused on a specific task, when you're daydreaming, reflecting, just existing. This network is hugely responsible for constructing your sense of self. It's literally building your identity. your narrative about who you are. When you experience parentification, your default mode network wired itself around a core belief. I am the helper. I am the fixer. I am the one who holds everything together. Your identity became completely fused with your utility to others. The neural pathways that should have been encoding, I deserve care and my needs matter, were instead encoding, I am what I provide, and I earn love by being useful. So here's what's happening now as an adult. You're not consciously choosing users and takers. You're unconsciously seeking out the same dynamic that defined your childhood. Your brain is trying to complete an old script. It's looking for familiar patterns, even painful ones, because familiarity feels like home to your nervous system. You keep ending up with people who take and take, because somewhere deep in your wiring, you're still that kid trying to prove that if you just give enough, if you just try hard enough, if you just sacrifice completely enough, someone will finally see your value and stay. Someone will finally love you without you having to earn it every single day. But here's the brutal truth. They won't. The script was written by a child who didn't understand that love isn't supposed to be conditional. That child was doing their absolute best to survive an impossible situation. But the survival strategy that kept you safe back then is destroying your relationships now. You're auditioning for approval from people who were never going to give it. Because the original people who were supposed to love you unconditionally taught you that love always comes with a price tag. Trait number 5, the betrayal bind. Okay, this final piece is going to tie everything together, and it's probably the darkest part of this whole pattern. There's an evolutionary biology principle called reciprocal altruism. Basically, it's the idea that humans survived as a species because we helped each other out. I scratch your back, you scratch mine, we both make it through winter. This system works beautifully when both people are operating in good faith. But there's a fatal vulnerability built into this system that certain people exploit. Here's what happens. When you invest deeply in someone, when you become their go-to person for emotional crises, when you're the one they call when everything's collapsing, when you've seen them at rock bottom and held them together, you accumulate something powerful. You gain leverage. Not because you're trying to, but because it's the natural result of intimacy and support. You know their secrets. You've witnessed their meltdowns. You've seen behind the mask they show the rest of the world. You hold evidence of their vulnerability, their dependence, their moments of complete weakness. You're a walking, breathing archive of times when they needed you desperately. Now, for healthy people with secure attachment styles, this creates deeper trust and connection. They feel safe with you because you've seen them at their worst and didn't abandon them. But for people with fragile egos, narcissistic tendencies, or what psychologists call Machiavellian personality traits, people who view relationships as power dynamics rather than genuine connections, your knowledge of their vulnerability is an existential threat. As long as you exist in their life, you're a living reminder that they were weak once, that they needed someone, that they weren't completely self-sufficient and invincible. You're proof that the image they project to the world isn't the full story. And for someone whose entire sense of self is built on maintaining superiority and control, that's intolerable. So they do something that seems insane from the outside but makes perfect strategic sense from their perspective. They preemptively betray you. They discard you before you can use what you know against them. They smear your reputation to mutual friends, rewriting history so that you become the villain and they become the victim of your manipulation or toxicity. They cut you off completely and act like you never mattered. They might even attack you publicly, turning your private vulnerabilities into weapons while positioning themselves as the injured party. This isn't emotional. This isn't personal in the way you think it is. This is a calculated power move. By destroying your credibility and ejecting you from their life, they reclaim control of the narrative. They eliminate the threat you represent. They get to go back to feeling powerful instead of feeling exposed. Here's what you need to understand. You weren't betrayed because you failed them. You weren't discarded because you weren't good enough or helpful enough. You were betrayed specifically because you were too good at helping, because you saw too much, because you mattered too much, because your presence in their life was a mirror reflecting their inadequacy back at them, and smashing that mirror was the only way they could feel whole again. The betrayal isn't evidence that you did something wrong. It's evidence that you did everything right for someone who was fundamentally incapable of handling genuine intimacy and reciprocity. Look, I need you to walk away from this video understanding one critical thing. You are not defective. That capacity you have to feel deeply, to show up when it matters, to give without keeping score, to genuinely care about people's well-being. That's not a character flaw. That's not naivety. That's not weakness. That's actually the signature of a high empathy, high intelligence nervous system. Your brain is capable of incredible emotional complexity and connection. That's a gift, not a curse. The real problem is simpler than you think. Nobody ever taught you how to screen for reciprocity. You were never given the tools to identify who's actually capable of matching your energy. Instead, you were taught, probably before you could even articulate it, that your worth as a human being was determined by how much you could provide for others. That love was something you had to earn through service, through sacrifice, through making yourself indispensable. But that's a lie. That's the programming talking. That's the wound, not the truth. Here's the actual truth. There are people out there whose mirror neurons fire the same way yours do. People who feel gratitude instead of resentment when you help them. People who understand that relationships are built on mutual care, not just extraction. People who see you as a whole person with needs and boundaries and value beyond your utility. Those people exist. But you're never going to find them as long as you're still running auditions for people who were never going to choose you anyway. As long as you're trying to prove your worth to people whose brains literally cannot process connection the way yours does. As long as you're replaying a childhood script where love always came with impossible conditions. Your brain is wired for profound, meaningful connection. You just need to make sure you're plugging into people who are wired the same way. People who don't see your empathy as an invitation to take advantage. People who understand that real relationships are about both people showing up, not just one person endlessly pouring into a bottomless pit. Stop giving your best self to people who are incapable of recognizing what they have. Start directing that energy toward people who actually deserve it, including yourself. We're out here decoding the human operating system one video at a time. If this one hit you where it hurts, hit that subscribe button. Drop a sword emoji in the comments if this described your life. And if you want the full psychological breakdown, including the neuroscience of why narcissists can spot givers instantly, that's all in my newsletter. Links in the description below. You're not broken, you just need better people. Now go find them.